The reason that I said why do they need to stay in MOU, because the agreement between the government in Lebanon and the Israeli government is totally contradicting the first clause of the MOU.
Yes, yeah, very much so, and that's a loophole. Okay, the first clause says that the United States and Iran, and in conjunction with their allies, will, and what the last clause is, will protect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon. All right, but now when you got the government of Lebanon saying, "Okay, we're good with Israel," okay, Iran doesn't have a right under international law to do anything else. So yeah, it's a loophole, and that part is no longer really applicable.
Yeah, but the war was between Hezbollah and Israel. It wasn't between the government in Lebanon and Israel. This is the other problem.
No, I agree. I agree. No, it's I think the United States was trying to be, again, too clever and using this as a gambit, and they said, well, yeah, we're still upholding number one, but we're just supporting what the government of Lebanon wants. And our obligation is to support the territorial integrity of Lebanon. This is what the government wants. They want Hezbollah out and they want Israel in. So we just got to go with that. Yeah, and it's so from this point, Iran just continues its support of Hezbollah, and wait and see if again, if Israel continues to bomb inside Lebanon after, quote, making this agreement, which I'm sure they will.
They did today.
Yeah. So
they struck Nabatea 2 times.
So it's gonna be up to Iran to decide whether to intervene or not.
Israel is staying in the southern part of Lebanon because part of the agreement is Israel is going to stay in that area as long as Hezbollah is not disarmed. That would never happen, which it means that Israel is going to stay forever in the southern part of Lebanon.
Well, they're going to try. Forever is a long time, and things change over, we'll see if Israel actually has the ability to stay there. Particularly once the United States, if the United States continues to pull out its air assets, Israel is not going to have the kind of combat power that it thought it had. It will be weakened.
Do you think, Larry, do you think if Iran escalates, let's assume Iran attacks the targets that you mentioned, what would be the reaction on the part of the United States? New strikes on Iran? Deeper?
Yeah. Well, they're going to try. Again, if they try to run airstrikes, Tomahawk missiles, cruise missiles into the interior of Iran, that means they're going to have to fly from Al Udeid, 1,000 miles. They're going to be burning up a lot of fuel. And this will be, again, let me emphasize that when this war started, you had a 20% drop in the supply of oil. And to compensate for that, the U.S. and other countries began drawing down on their reserves. Even though they're drawing on their reserves, they weren't making a lot more, of a barrel of oil. Let's say 25 to 30% is used to make aviation fuel or diesel fuel. You can't make them both. You got to make one or the other. What happened to the demand for aviation fuel? It went up because of the war with Iran. Get all these planes flying, KC-135s, all the F-35s, the F-15s, the F-16s, the A-10 Warhawks, the helicopter, all of this. So that's chewing away at the the demand. That means less and less supply. the United States could potentially run out of fuel in 2 weeks. And so if they choose to escalate in this, that can accelerate that process that's going to create a crisis. And maybe that's Iran's intent all along. I don't know. I could, certainly make a case for it.
My concern is more about Lebanon than Iran, Larry, because I know that the war of attrition that is happening right now between Iran and the United States is not sustainable for the United States.
Right.
Because the continuation of the war, they have to, again, to send a lot of weapons, missiles to the region. They have, by the way, they have the missiles, they have everything there. But in a long run, these sort of fights is going to escalate. It's not going to stay with the same intensity that we're witnessing right now. It's going to escalate more and more.
Right. But I mean, look, what's going on in Lebanon is horrible. The United States is playing an active role in creating that horror, and it's not going to end anytime soon. It's been, I mean, dude, it's been going on longer than you've been alive. It started back in 1975, and you still got this situation where the leader of Lebanon doesn't give a good goddamn about his own people. Cares only about himself and he's got his French passport and his escape ticket to get back to France, that things get really rough. And meanwhile, they're not stopping the killing of the Lebanese people.
Many leaders in the region are talking about the concept of greater Israel. Erdogan today was talking about it. The problem is greater Israel and Zionism in the region. At least they're talking about it. It's something new. Before, nobody was talking about greater Israel. What does it mean?
Well, that's true. But, okay, what's Erdogan doing about it? Is he cutting off the oil to Israel? No. So he can just shut up. Who cares what he says? I mean, just flapping his gums, making, filling up some hot air. I look at the action. If he acts, if he says, okay, this is it, we can no longer tolerate this, we're going to cut off the flow of oil to Israel. They can get it elsewhere. We're not going to be complicit. If he did that, I'd say, hey, pay attention to Erdogan. But right now, he's just trash talking. It means nothing yet.
The concept on the part of Iranian is that we have to make Lebanon the graveyard of Israel, greater Israel. The concept of the greater Israel.
Right.
That must be the graveyard of that concept. Without that, because it's going to spread all over the region. But Lebanon is the base case to stop it. And that's why I'm telling you, it's not my understanding of what's going on in Iran, because we have two sides basically disagreeing on the issue of how to deal with the United States with the new sort of arrangement in the region. One side says we have to keep the fight in Lebanon because Israel must stop in Lebanon. They're not gonna. And the reason they're arguing this way, Larry, because look at what is happening in Lebanon with the new government. It's the same thing that was happening with the government, with the PLO, with Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank. Yeah. The guy was cooperating with the Israelis, and little by little, Israel annexed all of the West Bank, and not annexed. They just settled.
They put themselves in a position to do so. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. This is the fear on the part of Iranians.
Well, it's not an unfounded fear; it's a legitimate fear. Yes.
But you mentioned Israel doesn't have the capabilities.
Correct.
What is your understanding of that? Why do you think that they're not capable of doing that?
They've got 9 million people total. They don't have, if they're fighting a war in Gaza and a war in West Bank, and a war in Syria and a war in Lebanon, they don't have enough resources for that. Hell, the United States couldn't do it.
Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza. 3 parts. Israel said, the Israeli Minister of Energy said that all of Gaza Strip is under the Israeli occupation and will remain under the Israeli occupation. Do you think that something going to happen on that front to stop Israel in Gaza?
Yeah, eventually they'll suffer enough casualties at the hands of Hezbollah. They'll pull out, as they have in the past. So it's, that's not new. So it's just what changes each time is the amount of time they spend in Lebanon until they decide, okay, we've had enough suffering, let's go.
Yeah, the Iranian media is just reporting on the damage that was done so far. It says that the boats, they said that they're going to report on the attacks tonight. It seems that the attack is going to happen in the coming hours.
Sure.
We don't know the extent, and are they going to use, missiles, or they're going to use drones?
I suspect this one will be mixed use of drones and missiles, and they will go after the air base where these attacks were launched from. So if that's Mawafaq al-Salti in Jordan, that's what they'll hit. If it's up in Kuwait, that's where they'll hit. I don't think it's Al Udeid in Qatar. In fact, I understand that Al Udeid used to be the site for the Combined Air Operations Center, CAOC. That coordinated all air movement, all air traffic, all combat air traffic in the entire region, going from Turkey down to Yemen and then down to over to Pakistan. My understanding is they've now closed that down at Al Udeid. They moved it to an Air Force base in South Carolina in the United States, a long ways from that area.
You remember Project Freedom, Larry? The Project Freedom, the main concept was sending a lot of these tankers and ships and vessels together in order to, to confuse the whole mechanism of Iranian IRGC, to somehow make some sort of surprise move on their part, and they're not going to be able to hit all of these vessels together.
Right.
And this is the same strategy that is happening today. Without having that war, without having the American presence in the Strait of Hormuz.
Mm-hmm.
They try to facilitate that with American Navy. Right now, American Navy is not there. They're using these commercial vessels, tankers, and all of that in order to achieve that. It's my understanding is that they're going to hit these tankers as long as they see they want to try to pass through the Strait of Hormuz without permission, and we're going to have these attacks.
But you mean Iran's going to hit the oil tankers that are floating?
They hit one of the oil tankers today.
Yeah, so if it's carrying 2 million barrels, I mean it's what they call a VLCC. Oh. So that's the next to the largest size of oil tanker that there is. Carry 2 to 3 million barrels. You got these very, very, very large ones that can carry out, much more than that.
How much pressure do they receive, the United States and the Trump administration is receiving from other countries? For example, the countries from Japan, from South Korea. Is there any sort of, I haven't seen any sort of report on that. Have you seen any?
No, I haven't. There may be. When you're talking diplomatic pressure, Japan doesn't have a lot of levers to pull with the United States, or they do MRI machines, some medical equipment, high speed. but they're not the dominant, from the U.S. standpoint, primary trading partner at all.
So basically, the problem that Donald Trump is under, the pressure that he's under, is coming from the domestic problems. It's not anything from outside. Is that the case?
Well, he's getting outside pressure from the Zionists in Israel and from the Zionist cabal here in the United States that are not in government but are in business and the private sector. And so, yeah, they're applying a lot of pressure on Trump, and it's being done in some very subtle ways, some very strong ways. So it's we're right now in this escalatory cycle.
Yeah.
U.S. hit harder today than they did yesterday. Iran's going to strike back harder today than it did yesterday. That may mean the United States will say, okay, we got to step it up. They're going to strike back harder. Iran will strike, and it'll keep escalating until somebody on the U.S. side says, okay, we got to put a stop to this, because Iran's not going to put a stop to it. You've been the defenders, or you've been the targets all along, and so now they're just going to say, we've got to continue to pressure the United States, make it costly for the United States that they can't continue this.
How?
Take out all the air tankers of Ben Gurion, for starter. Do that, and continue to bomb any remaining radar sites and communication sites at any of the other U.S. bases in the area that are being used to launch attacks against Iran. So I can see Iran deciding to be very legalistic about this, and that if the United States used air assets that came out of Jordan, Kuwait, and UAE, then it would only hit, it would retaliate against Jordan, Kuwait, and the UAE. If it wanted to go beyond, that level, the next level would be, they're going to hit civilian targets in Jordan, not just military targets. So that's going to, that would be foolish, I think, to do from just a strategic standpoint, but you have to take it into account that could be done.
Here is new reports, Larry. It seems that the Bandar Lengia, Bandar Konk, the two other areas were hit by 4 U.S. missiles, or maybe all of these attacks coming from. I have never heard of any drone attack on the part of the United States. They're basically using fighter jets. Yeah.
Yeah, they drop a JASSM, which is a cruise missile, or the Tomahawk. They may be using some other munition, but those have been the two most common.
Yeah. Looking at the targets, it seems that basically they're flying over UAE, and to get there, I think the only
I don't know, because we don't know where they originated from, do we?
No. Let's assume they're coming from Jordan. And if they're coming from Jordan, I assume they're not going to use Saudi Arabia airspace.
Oh, they probably shouldn't. The Saudis have protested against that, unless they're playing another game behind the scenes that we're not seeing.
It's not going to be something to hide. And if they're using the Saudi Arabia airspace, they're going to find sooner or later. And yeah, there is no report on the Iranian media. There is no report where they're coming from. And
but Iran knows, and the Chinese and Russians are helping out too with intelligence.
Larry, do you think that Europe, as right now, what's going on? You mentioned how the United Kingdom was somehow spreading misinformation about the Strait of Hormuz, and everything is just doing this and that, the new routes close to the Omani. are they participating in these sort of operations?
Well,
How
indirectly.
involved are they?
Yeah, indirectly they're involved. But the actual military command that's involved is CENTCOM. And I don't know what the British component for this is, but the Brits are involved too.
The reports here, basically, they're talking about the fighter jets. And I don't know if during the war, the United States has used any of the fighter jets from Europe, or the NATO Secretary General said that they have used 4,000 to 5,000 times the bases in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems they use all of the American assets in Europe, not not European fighter jets. Yeah.
Well, their jets aren't very good anyway, so it's no bother for them to not use them.
What's so amazing to me that the MOU is a failed sort of contract between Iran and the United States. The case of Ukraine and Russia is just collapsing, and Donald Trump is telling us that Zelensky is doing great right now.
Right.
Yeah. And
yeah, hey, he's not dead. It's like Weekend at Bernie's. They carry around a dead guy. Oh no, he's just relaxed.
yeah, and China just watching, just sitting back and watching. Good one. Do this, do that. And I don't see China be under any sort of pressure as the United States is today, as an outcome of what is happening to the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
They have the strategic sort of, stockpile in China. They're not that much concerned about the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, they're concerned. I mean, they've got investments there too. But they're not doing it to apply overwhelming pressure on Iran to end this right now and not retaliate. They're not doing that.
Yeah.
But I think they recognize that Iran has every right under international law to do so. And by that, I mean retaliate.
To the point of sanctions, Larry, do you see any sort of willingness among the people in Congress to lift the sanctions on Iran? Let's assume everything goes well.
Hell no. No, they'd have to be drugged, kicking and screaming to do it. I think Trump might be able to get that passed, assuming he gets, we'll see what happens with the remaining primaries, whether the anti-Trumpers are taking the stage or the pro-Trumpers. In New Hampshire, you had one lady who's a very much pro-Trump win. Same here in my district. So.
You're in Florida, and it's different. Right. It's not going to reflect. Florida is a red state.
Correct.
Do you think that he's gonna be defeated with the midterm elections in the United States? It doesn't
Trump,
seem that MOU is getting anywhere good for Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to have trouble being, his selection will have trouble being elected because he can't run for another term after this. He's done.
Yeah. Repercussions out of the midterm elections going to be huge for the Trump administration. J.D. Vance, he went on Bill Maher show.
Yeah.
You saw.
I haven't watched it yet. I saw it, and in those sort of circumstances, Bill Maher doesn't do hard-hitting questions necessarily, and it sounded like J.D. Vance held his own, and they had an interesting discussion.
And that's another sign that he's preparing for 2028, I think.
Maybe. He's told Robert Barnes that he's not going to do it. and Barnes has been steeped in DC politics for quite a while, and was at, it was, he's dealt with, I guess, a whole variety of issues. So, yeah, let's just go to the next one.
He told me yesterday that Donald Trump really wants to get out of the region.
He does and he doesn't. It depends on who he talked to last. That's part of the problem. He's really his own worst enemy in this. He keeps talking about he's sending mixed signals. Again, did Rubio go off on his own and do what he did, or was that did he do that with sort of the blessing of Donald Trump? I don't know. Either way, it's a terribly stupid thing to do, because you're working at cross purposes and undermining yourself.
Rubio, I remember every time Rubio went to Europe with the case of Ukraine, everything was getting worse, and he was, the same is happening, by the way, in the West Asia.
He was standing back and keeping his hands off of it. No, not my problem. Yeah. Well, now he goes and basically contradicts the MOU with this stunt with the GCC, and apparently even initially I've been told that only Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain attended, but apparently UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait attended, but apparently Qatar and Saudi Arabia also had representatives there.
Yeah.
So they're trying to salvage it.